There's another side to this story also. And that is that not only does he show you the lost, but he also shows you who we're seeking. And because in the first picture you see a shepherd who was out seeking for his sheep that was lost. Now it's a 1 to 100 to 1 to 99 kind of ratio. And when God calls us to go and do some things, it's going to cost us some things. There are going to be times when God will call you to leave that you know, that is comfortable, that is familiar with around you. He's going to call you to leave all that and go into a foreign country, quote unquote, into a different culture, into a different setting. Why? Because you're seeking after that which is lost. There are many stories that have been told of people who have lost. My brother that's running the video today, making me look good, right? And all that Congo. I got you right? Good. J.W. Tucker, a missionary from Arkansas, back in the 1970s, 1980s. He actually went the first time in the 1960s. It's a very remote part of Congo was where he went. And while he was there, there was a great uprising that came, and all the other missionaries left, and he felt like that he needed to stay there, and he stayed. And during the process of time, some of the rebel tribes and the tribal problems that were going on there, he got caught in the middle of it. They literally beat him to death. And they took him and took his body and threw it into the river, and he was literally fed to the crocodiles. Several months later, in fact it was about 2 years later, the ruling people in that area, the people over the Congo, they came and they said, we're going to bring peace to this area. And he found a brigadier general and he said, I want you to go back to this area. And with your authority, you bring about peace back in that area. When he got there, he began to walk with them and work with them and try to find some way of bringing out and helping them to bring peace to that area, because he knew that it would take more than just some kind of a physical force. But force is not really that which brings peace. Force could bring kind of quietness, but it's not that which really brings peace. Peace has to come from inside out. And we were singing about that this morning, how that it's the peace of the Lord that we have and that we receive. This man was a Christian. Just 2 months before Brother J.W. Tucker had been killed, he had been witnessed to this man had been witnessed to by Brother Tucker and had led him to the Lord, and to begin those early days of planting the Word of God in his life. And while he's there working with these people, he found that there was a saying that they had among them, that if the blood of a person ran in their river, they would listen to his message. And this man brought them all together, and he said, let me tell you, he says, I know this man and his blood ran in this river, and you must listen to what I have to tell you. And on that day they stood and they listened as he began to tell them about Christ, to tell them that God had his Son and his name was Jesus, and that he came to forgive them of their sins. That you see, it took a man who was willing to leave the 99 and go into the wilderness that he might seek after that one which was lost, that they may come to know who Christ was. Sister Lillian Thrasher, back in the 1920s, she had been proposed to by a man who wanted to marry her, but she had a call of God to go to Egypt in her heart. She said, no, I can't. I must go to Egypt. She left him here and she got on a boat with only the money that she had for a one-way ticket. While she was there in Egypt, she began to form, and they brought her, she didn't have much money, but they brought her a little baby that they were going to literally kill because of some problems with the child. And she took the child in and began to love it, and began to nourish it. That began what it was known as the Lillian Thrasher Orphanage, that still continues today. And she poured literally thousands of lives through her orphanage because she was there. What am I telling you? I'm telling you, I can tell you story after story after story of people who were willing to leave the comfort, willing to leave their own culture, willing to leave their own people, willing to leave everything they had to go into a world because the people were lost. They were willing to go and seek it. I think of this lady as the coin keeper is what I call her. Because she didn't do a very good job, but when she discovered that her coin was lost, she began to do something that was very interesting. First thing she did was call for a lamp. Now, that doesn't really make sense in our culture. Perhaps we would say, well, turn the light on, flip a switch on or something. But the houses were small houses. They didn't have any windows on the side, so it would have been a dark place where she had it. It would probably be a dirt floor, and the dirt floor was... they probably had straw on the floor to kind of keep the dirt down and the dust down and keep it in somewhat kind of a clean area. And the first thing she would do in that dark place is that she would call for a lamp, a light that she could show that she could begin to see. I think Jesus says that we are salt and that we are light. We're like a lamp that is set upon a hill, or a candle that is set upon a candlestick. And when I drove up in front of your church yesterday, I thought, yes, this is my kind of place. You say, well, why are you saying it's your kind of place? Well, you see, lamps are used most in dark areas. They're not used in places where it's real bright. Now, I'm not saying that this is a dark area, but what I am wanting you to see is that this church is placed in a community. It's not placed in a position that's, and I'm not critical of anyone else, but there is a need today to see our churches that, like the Dream Center, that are placed right in the heart of where the lost are, right in the heart of the communities, right in the heart of places that are there. And so we are here to show you that there's a light. And when I was a boy growing up, back in the 1920s, no, it wasn't quite that far back, but when I was a boy growing up, we used to refer to Africa as the dark continent. And I started using that phrase 2 years ago when we started making the transition into this ministry. And I began to see white faces, and I thought, what's wrong? And I began to understand some things as I begin to do some research, because there are some of you who've never heard that phrase. You don't know what I'm talking about. But when I was a boy growing up, they would talk about darkest Africa because we saw Africa as a place that had never seen the gospel of Jesus Christ. We saw there were so many areas of the country that there had not been any kind of witness. There were no churches that had been established. Just in the Assemblies of God alone in Africa today, there are over 50,000 churches scattered across the continent. Africa is no longer the darkest nation that we would talk about. Africa sends out missionaries. Burkina Faso, which is one of the poorest nations in all of Africa, they send out missionaries. Nigeria sends out missionaries. Kenya sends out missionaries. Malawi has sent out missionaries. What am I telling you? I'm telling you that there have been lights that have been planted throughout all of Africa because of the people who have been willing to leave that home, leave that with comfort, and go and say, we're here, we're going to, the lost is here, and we're going to put a light here so that it can be seen and the gospel of Jesus Christ can be preached.